The political world was rocked by allegations that shook the very foundation of Washington's media landscape, as Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio publicly accused former President Bill Clinton of operating a covert network of media surrogates and digital influencers designed to shape political narratives behind the scenes. The explosive claim, first aired during a primetime interview on Liberty Watch, a popular conservative cable network, triggered an immediate frenzy of speculation, media analysis, and partisan outrage. Clinton, who had largely remained outside the direct line of political fire in recent years, suddenly found himself at the center of a blistering controversy that crossed generational and ideological lines. The timing, just weeks before a critical Senate vote on new media regulation laws, suggested to many that Vance's accusations were not only politically calculated, but potentially destabilizing. The segment began with a routine discussion about disinformation and the rise of soft propaganda in American political discourse. But midway through the interview, Vance shifted tone, leaning forward in his chair and locking eyes with the host. "It's time we stop pretending," he said. "There's a shadow network. It's not a theory. It's real. And its architect is Bill Clinton." Within minutes, the clip went viral. The senator continued, outlining what he claimed were links between a group of progressive content creators, YouTubers, Substack writers, and TikTok personalities, and an underground advisory group that traced back to Clinton's post-presidency foundation offices in New York. Vance alleged that this informal network received briefings, narrative direction, and funding through intermediaries tied to Clinton's nonprofit infrastructure, all with the goal of subtly steering online political discourse, particularly in swing states. "This isn't about tweets or opinion," Vance added. "It's about an ex-president pulling strings through soft influence operations. It's coordinated, it's concealed, and it's dangerous." The accusation sent a thunderclap through political media. Progressive commentators dismissed the claim as a baseless conspiracy theory aimed at silencing independent voices. But conservative circles seized on it, dubbing it Clinton's info ring, and pushing hashtags like #NarrativeNetwork and #ClintonLeaks into trending territory. Right-wing influencers began dissecting old podcast episodes, tweets, and video interviews of progressive creators, looking for any indication of talking point synchronization. Clinton's team, blindsided by the accusation, issued a terse statement late that evening. President Clinton has no involvement in any coordinated media activity and categorically denies Senator Vance's irresponsible and inflammatory remarks. But the denial did little to stem the tide. By morning, digital sleuths had already dug up archived LinkedIn connections between mid-level Clinton Foundation staffers and several of the named creators. Reddit threads exploded with speculation, some claiming to have found grant records matching the time frames Vance described. Conservative news outlets devoted wall-to-wall coverage to what one host called the media equivalent of Watergate, but with hashtags. Democratic lawmakers scrambled to respond. While many privately dismissed the allegations as outlandish, few wanted to be caught flat-footed. Some issued vague statements supporting free speech and condemning baseless personal attacks, careful not to align too closely with either side. Others, sensing danger, went quiet. Clinton, for his part, remained off-camera. But behind closed doors, sources described high-level meetings between his legal advisors, PR team, and digital strategy consultants. A close aide, speaking anonymously, confirmed the former president was furious and viewed the accusations as a personal vendetta dressed up as a media scandal. In conservative media, the story only grew. A previously unknown former staffer came forward claiming they had been instructed to monitor social media climate reports and brief content-adjacent media assets, though they provided no documentation. The lack of evidence didn't stop the story from gaining traction. At a press conference in Ohio, Vance doubled down. "We're not going to let media elites hide behind the First Amendment while manipulating millions. I respect free speech, but I don't respect covert political machinery disguised as independent journalism." The clash had begun to take on symbolic weight. Clinton, the legacy establishment figure defending his post-presidential influence, and Vance, the rising conservative firebrand positioning himself as a slayer of institutional rot. Social media, true to form, amplified both sides. One viral tweet read, Bill Clinton built the 90s media empire. Why wouldn't he build the TikTok one too? Another countered, Vance is fabricating conspiracies because he can't win a policy debate. By week's end, Congress was abuzz with rumors of a potential Senate inquiry into political influence operations. Clinton's team, meanwhile, was considering legal action of their own, though some insiders warned that a lawsuit could legitimize Vance's claims in the public eye. As the noise grew louder, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a media story. It was a referendum on narrative power in the age of algorithmic politics, and a clash between the old political machine and the digital wildfire that could no longer be controlled. The firestorm ignited by Senator J.D. Vance's allegations against Bill Clinton refused to die down. If anything, it evolved from a viral media moment into a full-fledged digital manhunt. Within hours of the Liberty Watch interview airing, a legion of online researchers, independent journalists, and digital sleuths had launched into action, determined to uncover whether the former president had indeed constructed a covert media influence network. Leading the charge was a coalition of digital watchdogs on Reddit and Substack who began tracing financial records tied to the Clinton Foundation. Their findings, scattered across various forums, began to converge. A series of grants awarded under obscure program titles: Civic Engagement Acceleration, Narrative Resilience Labs, and Digital Democracy Outreach. Each, on the surface, seemed innocuous, but deeper inspection revealed they had all gone to emerging content creators with significant followings on platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Screenshots of archived Foundation reports were quickly compiled into Twitter threads and blog exposés. One headline on a viral Medium post read, "Follow the funds. Did Clinton's nonprofit build a covert media machine?" The post detailed a timeline correlating grant dispersals with spikes and synchronized progressive messaging across various digital influencers. A data analyst on X, formerly Twitter, posted a heat map visualizing content frequency by location and topic, captioned simply, "This isn't organic." Clinton's team, already reeling from Vance's televised accusations, now found themselves on the defensive in a decentralized battlefield, the Internet. Within the Foundation's Manhattan office, emergency meetings were convened. Staff scrambled to audit past grants, communications, and consultant activity. An internal email warning employees not to speak to the press was leaked within hours. Then came the drop. A whistleblower identifying as a former mid-level strategist at the Foundation released a cache of documents, partially redacted emails, internal memos, and planning decks. One slide from a 2021 presentation read, "Build media capacity through narrative nodes. Target Gen Z trust channels." Another memo, dated March 2022, detailed a proposal for quarterly briefings with selected content partners to ensure message alignment on key legislative cycles. Conservative media erupted. On Fox News, pundits used phrases like smoking gun, covert propaganda, and digital Watergate. Hashtags like hashtag narrative nodes and hashtag Gen Z ops trended for hours. Meanwhile, left-leaning outlets questioned the authenticity of the documents, calling them unverified, selectively presented, and contextually ambiguous. Clinton's spokesperson issued a formal statement. "These materials, if real, are fragments pulled out of broader initiatives promoting civic literacy. To suggest a secret media cabal is not only absurd but irresponsible." Still, the damage had been done. Senator Vance called a press conference in Columbus. Standing before a backdrop of American flags, he held up a printout of the leaked slide. "This isn't civic literacy. This is psychological targeting. If this had come from a foreign government, we'd call it influence warfare." The press ate it up. Mainstream publications like Politico and the New York Times cautiously entered the fray. A joint piece titled "Influence or Initiative" inside the Clinton Foundation's digital footprint attempted to balance the narrative, quoting nonprofit transparency experts and former program directors. But their nuanced take was drowned out in the cacophony of social media, where black and white interpretations ruled. Online creators named in the grant reports began releasing statements. Some denied ever receiving direction from the Foundation. Others admitted to attending informal briefings, but claimed they were nonpartisan and educational. One viral TikTok creator said in a live Q&A, "Look, if someone's helping me pay for better production while I talk about issues I care about, how is that a conspiracy?" The response was mixed. On Instagram and X, conservative accounts shared screenshots from the documents, often out of context, with captions like, "Funded to control your mind." Progressive voices tried to push back, framing the backlash as a distraction from real corruption. But the narrative tide was shifting. The phrase media nodes became symbolic, the kind of sinister, academic-sounding term that sticks in public memory. Cable news hosts repeated it nightly. Late-night comedians riffed on it. Merch with slogans like, "I'm not a narrative node," began to appear online. Inside Clinton's inner circle, panic turned to strategy. Some advisors urged a bold counterattack, file lawsuits, release full documents, go public. Others recommended silence. "The more we talk," one aide warned, "the more we legitimize their framing." But silence came with its own risks. With each passing day, the perception of concealment grew stronger. By the end of the week, a bipartisan group of senators introduced a resolution calling for an independent review of nonprofit political influencer ties. Though symbolic, it marked a turning point. The battle over the digital evidence had moved from hashtags to the halls of Congress. And at the center of it all, Bill Clinton, once the face of the Democratic Renaissance, now stood accused of mastering a new kind of machine, not for elections but for influence. As the fallout from the leaked documents intensified, the Clinton-Vance controversy evolved into something much larger than either man. It was no longer just about influence networks or media manipulation. It was about allegiance. The country, already politically fractured, now faced a new dividing line. Those who believed the Clinton Foundation had orchestrated a coordinated information campaign, and those who believed the entire scandal was a calculated smear. Mainstream media split down ideological lines with brutal precision. Conservative outlets ran nightly exposés dissecting every grant, memo, and digital connection. Clinton's name trended alongside phrases like soft coup, narrative warfare, and covert influence. Primetime anchors invited panelists to theorize how long the Clinton system had been running, some going as far back as the late 2000s. In contrast, progressive media scrambled to reframe the story. Editorials denounced Vance's accusations as dangerous paranoia, claiming the leaked materials were cherry-picked and misrepresented. One headline in The Atlantic read, "J.D. Vance isn't fighting propaganda, he's fueling it." The White House declined to comment directly, wary of stepping into a partisan minefield. Privately, however, Democratic leadership grew uneasy. Several aides expressed frustration that the Clintons, once revered party icons, were now an unpredictable variable. "We're working on housing and health care," one staffer grumbled off record. "Meanwhile, we're relitigating Bill Clinton's legacy in a TikTok war." Clinton himself remained silent. No interviews, no public statements, not even a tweet. Behind closed doors, sources described a man both furious and fatigued, unwilling to engage directly, yet deeply aware that in his absence, the narrative was slipping away. His advisors debated whether to go on offense or continue absorbing the blows. The internal split reflected the broader one playing out across the country. On college campuses, student organizations began hosting debates titled "Digital Democracy" or "Manufactured Consent." In corporate boardrooms, PR firms fielded panicked calls from clients asking whether their affiliations with Clinton-backed initiatives could now be perceived as political liabilities. Meanwhile, Senator Vance rode the wave with calculated poise. He avoided conspiracy language, sticking to clean, legal framing. At a policy roundtable in Cincinnati, he told reporters, "I'm not interested in scandal. I'm interested in transparency. The American people deserve to know who's shaping the narratives they trust." That line, "who's shaping the narratives they trust," became a rallying cry. Merchandise followed. T-shirts, hats, stickers, memes. Hashtag Narrative Trust trended on X, replacing more aggressive hashtags like hashtag ClintonLeaks with a more polished, marketable sentiment. Online, creators named in the original reports found themselves in a precarious position. Some lost sponsorships. Others gained overnight fame as digital dissidents. Their comment sections became war zones, half defending them as brave truth-tellers, half accusing them of being paid operatives. One YouTuber posted a tearful video. "I never received talking points. I just want to talk about student debt. And now people think I'm part of some secret media cabal." The emotional clip went viral, spawning its own hashtag #JustTalking. But it did little to heal the divide. By the end of the week, a Gallup poll revealed a startling shift. 47% of Americans believed significant media coordination occurs behind the scenes, involving political figures. 38% specifically named the Clinton Foundation as likely involved. The numbers weren't proof of guilt, but in the court of public opinion, perception had already become reality. For Clinton, the silence that once felt like dignity now looked like retreat. For Vance, the strategy that once seemed risky now looked prophetic. And for the nation, the line had been drawn, not between parties, but between two visions of reality, each with its own facts, followers, and fears. 2 weeks after J.D. Vance's accusations shook the foundations of political discourse, the Clinton camp finally broke its silence. The timing was deliberate, calculated, not a reactive burst, but a controlled detonation. And it began not with Clinton himself, but with those who still carried weight in his orbit. The first move came from a familiar face, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. In a carefully crafted op-ed published in the Washington Post, she dismissed Vance's claims as a paranoid fantasy, accusing him of weaponizing ambiguity and fear to undermine democratic dialogue. She wrote, "My husband has spent the better part of 2 decades supporting civic engagement and independent journalism. He doesn't need to orchestrate a secret media cabal. He believes in strengthening the Fourth Estate, not manipulating it." The piece went viral instantly, igniting fierce debate. Progressive circles celebrated the Clintons' reemergence as a long-overdue act of defiance. Conservative voices, however, saw it as confirmation of coordination. "The Queen defends the King," one Fox News anchor sneered. But the Clintons weren't finished. Within 48 hours, a 37-page dossier appeared online, released by a Clinton Foundation-affiliated public affairs team. Titled Narrative Disinformation, a response to false claims, the document outlined a detailed rebuttal to every major accusation levied by Vance. It included names and backgrounds of grant recipients, none of whom had documented partisan affiliations, budget breakdowns of each initiative, showing minimal spending on content production, redacted communications that revealed no explicit directives or talking points. The report painted the Foundation's work as legitimate civic outreach, chaotic, decentralized, and messy, but far from the orchestrated machine Vance described. The release was accompanied by coordinated statements from over a dozen prominent progressive journalists and creators who had been implicated in the initial leaks. Some posted videos walking through their involvement with the Foundation's programs. Others shared behind-the-scenes footage of editorial independence. One Substack writer even challenged Vance to a live-stream debate. At the same time, the Clinton camp launched a subtle yet strategic media counteroffensive. Surrogates appeared on MSNBC, NPR, and progressive podcasts, framing the entire saga as a right-wing distraction campaign. A key talking point emerged. Narrative warfare isn't coming from the left. It's coming from those who want to discredit truth itself. The language was intentionally elevated, aiming not just to defend Clinton, but to reframe the terms of the debate. Still, the backlash wasn't easily neutralized. Vance's team responded with a blistering press release, accusing the Clinton camp of playing semantic games while dodging core questions. They highlighted that the dossier avoided addressing the whistleblower memos or the Gen Z targeting strategies from the leaked slides. "They're trying to drown us in paperwork," Vance told a local news station. But none of it explains why their programs look more like influence ops than philanthropy. Online, the battle intensified. Progressive users posted the hashtag show the receipts in defense of the dossier. Conservatives countered with hashtag deflection dossier. On YouTube and TikTok, political influencers picked apart every page of the document, some treating it as gospel, others as propaganda. Meanwhile, Clinton himself remained behind the scenes, though his team floated the possibility of a live televised interview to set the record straight. Internal polling reportedly showed that his public trust had dipped significantly, especially among independents. Some aides argued a reappearance could backfire, reactivating dormant controversies and turning the scandal into a referendum on the Clinton legacy. Yet for all the noise, cracks had begun to appear in the Vance camp as well. A tech policy researcher with ties to Vance's advisory circle expressed unease in a background interview. There's a difference between exposing influence and starting a narrative war. Right now, we're playing with matches in a dry field. Mainstream media, sensing fatigue, started shifting tone. Headlines became more cautious. Analysts began asking not just whether Clinton coordinated media influencers, but whether it mattered more than the damage the battle itself was causing. One New Yorker editorial summed it up. In trying to expose shadow influence, are we blinding ourselves to the power of perception? By the end of the week, the Clinton counterattack had succeeded in muddying the waters, not in clearing their name completely, but in complicating the battlefield. It was no longer a story about guilt or innocence. It was a story about control. And the question had changed. Who owns the narrative? The Senate hearing room was full. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled every seat. Viewers across the country tuned in to watch what had begun as a viral soundbite spiral into a full-blown congressional reckoning. At the center of it all, Bill Clinton. Not as a witness, not yet, but as the silent presence around which the entire political media world had begun to orbit. The question before the Senate wasn't about criminal wrongdoing. It wasn't even about direct coordination. It was about precedent. Had the influence of legacy political figures extended too far into the unregulated world of digital content? Senator Vance opened the hearing with measured confidence. This isn't about one man. It's about the unseen machinery shaping public perception. His tone was calm, but his words landed like a hammer. He cited the whistleblower memos, the foundation grants, the media node language from the leaked slides. Then he turned toward the gallery. If we cannot agree that this matters, then we no longer have a republic. We have a narrative state. On social media, clips of the hearing went viral instantly. Conservative accounts praised Vance's composure. Progressive commentators countered with fact-check threads, pointing out the lack of direct evidence tying Clinton to the content creator's editorial choices. Meanwhile, Clinton's legal team submitted a formal rebuttal, a 74-page document dismissing the Senate inquiry as a political stunt masquerading as oversight. The statement was firm, but not combative. It ended with a single line. We will not dignify speculation with surrender. Outside the Capitol, protesters gathered. Some held signs that read free speech is not a conspiracy. Others waved banners accusing Clinton of information warfare. The divide that had emerged in tweets and live streams had spilled into the streets. Cable news split the screen. Vance speaking in the Senate on the left. Clinton's press secretary addressing reporters on the right. The clash wasn't just political. It was existential. Who gets to define truth in an age where every voice has a platform, but not every voice is equal? For Clinton, the weeks of silence had exacted a toll. Once seen as the most gifted political communicator of his generation, he now watched as his legacy was dissected through screenshots and algorithms. His advisors urged him to appear before the committee, but he declined. "This isn't my battlefield," he reportedly told a close aide. "This is a war of signals. I'm analog." Still, behind the scenes, pressure mounted. Donors grew nervous. Speaking invitations evaporated. Progressive leaders began distancing themselves quietly, redirecting media attention to present-day legislative battles. Even former allies issued neutral statements emphasizing the need for ethical media transparency, without mentioning Clinton by name. In contrast, Vance's political star soared. He was invited onto every major Sunday show. His campaign fundraising tripled. His memoir deal, once stalled, was suddenly back on the table. For many in conservative circles, he had become a symbol, not just of resistance to media bias, but of a new era of political storytelling. One built on disruption, not diplomacy. But cracks had begun to appear. A former Vance aide leaked internal strategy documents to the press, revealing discussions about keeping Clinton in the spotlight, regardless of legal outcome. In one message, a consultant wrote, "As long as we control the narrative, we don't need the facts." The quote exploded across media platforms. Progressives weaponized it instantly. Conservatives dismissed it as taken out of context. The hearing moved forward, but the storyline had blurred. Was this still about influence networks? Or had it become something more dangerous? A new chapter in America's never-ending war over truth itself? In the final moments of the session, a senator posed a question that echoed louder than any answer. When narrative replaces evidence, and perception replaces fact, who gets to say what's real? There was no reply, only silence. And then the gavel fell. No indictments were filed, no laws were changed, but a line had been crossed. And in the end, the truth wasn't buried. It was rewritten. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and press the like button.